Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video and the photo suggests, we're kind of in an opinion piece regarding lockdown here, and we're discussing compassion for whom. And the reason I decided to make this video, I really thought about this a lot before making this video, because I do understand that we veered down the avenue. We have our standard videos and we tend to publish 3 a day, but we've been discussing lockdown a lot and people have been asking me why. And I've discussed it. And first of all, I do think it's basically the legal issue of the day. It's being put into effect pursuant to the provisions of the emergency decree. They're claiming legal authority to do this, and it's having a tremendous impact as we've discussed on the economy, on Thai society just in general. So I'm discussing it for those reasons. And in a sense, I hesitate to say it's the biggest news, but I would definitely say it's the major legal issue presented to anyone who's living and working in Thailand at this point. And there are all kinds of ramifications for this. Again, I do understand this has gone down, I hesitate to say a tangent, but it seems to have taken up the bulk of our time on this channel. I don't think it's taken up the bulk, but it's the majority, I should say. But we have discussed this a lot. And I think it's because it's a pressing issue. And let me say, it just breaks my heart to watch, just folks I know here in Thailand, friends, Thai people that are just having a tough time dealing with this. Our clients who, some of them are just, I don't have the words, frankly, to describe how I feel about their situation. It's just very difficult. Now that said, I got a comment on this channel, and I'm going to go ahead and read it in its entirety, and then I'm going to come back around, circle back, and I'm going to break it out kind of point by point. So quoting directly, "If I were the Thai authorities, I would lock you up and throw away the key. You are in another country, not the U.S. Your main responsibility here is to behave responsibly. That includes respecting the culture and the society in which you find yourself. That also includes exhibiting compassion and empathy for those who are suffering. Admittedly, this may be difficult for a lawyer. Your lack of compassion and empathy as you just stand there robotically rattling off numbers and statistics is horrific and horrifying. It is reminiscent of heartless dictators and despots, the very same dictators you criticize. These are people, not numbers. People with mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. People with children and grandchildren that they will never see again. I'm not sure if you intended to come off sounding this way, but your heartless approach to death and suffering brought on by the pandemic will do nothing but attract those who are science illiterate, anti-vax, and pandemic deniers. The comment section is already full of these ignoramuses. The solution, ? Stop your complaining, speak and act responsibly, put your big boy pants on, roll up your sleeves, and help the poor and needy. If you can't figure that out by now, then you don't belong here." Okay, so where to begin? Let's go ahead and just break this out. Benjamin, "If I were the Thai authorities, I would lock you up and throw away the key. You are in another country, not the U.S. Not true. I'm a Thai. I'm in my country. And I have commented back on this, and I've said some of the points I'm going to make here, but there's more, and I'm going to get into this because, I took this one to heart, and they say, a lot of YouTubers say, don't read the comments. I read some of them. We have moderators. I have other folks that do help with the channel. It's not always me, by the way. You may see they're usually fairly banal comments where people are asking specific questions, and we'll tell them usually to just contact us. That's not always me. Sometimes it's me. If you see me, it'll say BWH below it. But this one I just happened to read, and I did comment back. But I just felt like a response was in order. So going back here, "Benjamin, if I were the Thai authorities, I would lock you up and throw away the key. You are in another country, not the U.S. Well, not true. I'm from the U.S., but I'm a naturalized Thai. I love Thailand. It is my adoptive country. It's where I live. It's where I've lived for almost a decade and a half now. And, I'm a Thai. Your main responsibility here is to behave responsibly. Well, I like to think I do that. I'm a tax-paying citizen. I have the right to speak my mind. So, going further, that includes respecting the culture and the society in which you find yourself. Again, I like to think I've done that, as exhibited by the fact that I was allowed to become a Thai. They don't just hand out Thai citizenship. I'm not getting into I am proud of it, and to my mind, it is a major thing. But, yes, I respect Thai society very much. It's one of my primary concerns that Thai society move forward positively into the future and not be bogged down in this negative feedback loop, in my opinion, of this cycle of endless lockdowns and economic stagnation. That also includes exhibiting compassion and empathy for those who are suffering. Well, I'll try to get this link up down here, and I'll see if my editor can go ahead and put a photo of this video. But this is actually from another YouTube channel. If you can go ahead and put this up on screen. It's called Padia's Darkest Hour Has Arrived. Former bar worker speaks out. And this is from Asian Wish. And, this is someone that's gone down there and they've interviewed folks and they've just showed what Padia looks like. I was watching the other day and it was very trying for me to watch that. People are really hurting. It's not just people that are being affected directly by this pandemic. There are people who are, quite frankly, absolutely destitute as a result of some of the policies that have been promulgated in response to the pandemic. I do apologize to the point that I speak robotically about death statistics and numbers and things. I apologize for that. If that seems like that was what I was doing, that's not my point. If you haven't noticed, I speak pretty robotically in these videos anyway. So that should account for some of it. It's not my intention to belittle the deaths associated with someone, associated with this whole situation. Now, that's stated. That is not my lack of compassion. If anything, I like to think I have a great deal of compassion for all of the people that are having a very difficult time getting through this. And not least of which the 2 to 3 million folks that were working in the tourism industry back in 2020 that were just completely knocked out of a job. And the Tourism Council of Thailand, we've discussed this in another video, that's their estimate, is 2 to 3 million just done, out of work immediately. And there are second and third order effects to that in the economy. There are folks who made their living off of those people, from economic interaction. This is hurting everyone. And, I'm not even going to get into things like suicide rates and use of alcohol and drugs, mental health issues associated with this. I hope I don't seem uncompassionate, because that's not my intention. That stated, I find it very odd that someone who says, I would lock you up and throw away the key, would do so for my perceived lack of compassion. There's a great line, I remember that film, Walk the Line, with Joaquin Phoenix. He's playing Johnny Cash. And there's a part, I'm a big fan of Johnny Cash myself, and there's a part in that film where his record producers say, well, nobody wants to see you playing music in a prison, and he sort of says, why? He says, well, a bunch of Christian people don't want to see you playing country music for a bunch of convicts. And that, I'm paraphrasing, but Johnny Cash's response was, he just said, well, that doesn't make him very Christian now, does it? And the point I'm trying to make is, if I seemed uncompassionate, my apologies. That was not my intention. My intention has been and remains hoping that there is some more nuanced response to this that isn't having this fundamentally and substantial negative economic impact on basically the entire country. you know, for, as I said, for something that on the ground here that I've been here watching this since this began, and I have yet to see demonstrable proof of any benefit resulting from these measures. If anyone can show me that, I'd be happy to, I'll get on here and say, well, I was completely wrong. I understand that's kind of a straw man. I'm sort of asking for something out there that may not be possible to get. But what we know is that since April, when this latest round, which started off as not being a lockdown, just restrictions, but whatever, and has progressed into this lockdown, the numbers just keep going up. And on top of that, and this is quoting from the Pattaya News, that's the PattayaNews.com. Article is titled, "Prominent Thai Doctor Says Lockdown Measures Aren't Working. Tighter Ones Won't Work Either. Ease Them to Save the Economy." Dr. Manun Lichawing Swang of Wichayut Hospital predicted the COVID-19 situation in Thailand via his online statement that the number of domestic infections and deaths from the COVID-19's Delta mutant will continue to increase regardless of how intense the lockdown measures are. Quoting further, the status read, "People's homes have become the place where high infections occurred overall, so some lockdown measures should be relaxed immediately before the Thai economy becomes even worse. The current measures are only hurting the economy and the people and not stopping the spread of COVID-19. Vaccines are not the answer, vaccines are the answer here, not tighter restrictions, curfews, and lockdowns." And, I don't know if he's correct. What I do know is he's a medical doctor, and he has a differing opinion from what can only be described as the conventional wisdom seems to be saying at this point. And when I read that and I look at case numbers going up regardless of lockdown measures, I have to ask the question is, and I think anybody should, is he correct? Should we be looking at that? Moving forward. Admittedly, this may be difficult for a lawyer. Everybody loves taking digs at lawyers. Okay, just going to let that go by. Your lack of compassion and empathy as you just stand there robotically rattling off numbers and statistics is horrific and horrifying. Well, as I said, I came by that honestly. I'm not doing that for any other reason than that's just how I talk in these videos. It is reminiscent of heartless dictators and despots, the very same dictators you criticize. Well, I don't know what dictators I'm criticizing. I haven't criticized any dictators on this channel. These are people, not numbers. Okay, fair enough. And as I said, if I seemed terse with respect to, how I vocalize those numbers, that's just how I talk. People with mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. People with children and grandchildren that they will never see again. And that is sad, and I am sorry to hear that. But there are 2 to 3 million people that were put out of work. And they have mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, spouses that are suffering as a result of this. Suffering is not mutually exclusive. There's no sort of monopoly on suffering. It's not a zero-sum game. And I don't know the answer precisely. I've said this before and I'll say it again. My general default position is when a clear option fails to present itself, the best option is to do nothing. I don't know. I'm not sure if you intended to come off sounding this way, but your heartless approach to death and suffering brought on by the pandemic will do nothing but attract those who are science illiterate, anti-vax, and pandemic deniers. Well, I don't know that can be said. I mean, my heartless approach to death and suffering, that I hope it comes through. I hope I convey it in these videos that I don't have a heartless approach to death and suffering. I truly do feel for the people that have died from this. I also have concerns about everyone else that's still here. No one's going to get out of life alive. The weirdest thing that I've seen in this whole phenomenon is this notion that we either do something about it. I mean, this notion that death doesn't occur. It happens, and I'm not saying we should mitigate unnecessary hardship or unnecessary health problems or unnecessary death. But, this notion that we either do this or you're a terrible person because it's sort of like the implicit argument seems to be that you're promoting someone's death, and that just isn't the case here. Quoting further, the comment section is already full of these ignoramuses. The solution: stop your complaining, speak and act responsibly, put your big boy pants on, roll up your sleeves, and help the poor and needy. Well, on that point, I have tried to help a large number of folks with respect to their financial situation here. Unfortunately, I've tried where I could. Our firm does make donations to charitable organizations, especially with respect to places where we try to hand out food and help as best we can. As to speak and act responsibly, I feel I am. I do. I think reasonable people can disagree on things, and reasonable people can ask questions, especially about something that is having such a substantial, broad impact on everyone. And it's as if the thing that really gets me thinking is these measures are unprecedented. I've never even heard of this kind of thing in history, especially on a global scale. Yes, I believe during the Spanish flu situation, I think Australia essentially just went into a total quarantine for like a year, and ships had to drop things off offshore and stuff. And they, so I'm not saying there aren't limited examples of similar circumstances, but even in wartime, in history, not just recent history, history ever, you've never seen a total shutdown of the overall economy. Now, I'm not saying it's not warranted. I'm not saying it wasn't warranted in 2020, but I do think people have the right to ask questions about the necessity of such things, especially where the cost benefit is pretty vague. If you can't figure that out by now, then you don't belong here. Well, I do belong here. I'm Thai, and I'm not going anywhere. So, as I said, if folks took offense to me speaking robotically regarding the numbers, I think those who watch this channel, at least relatively frequently, know that, yeah, I just kind of speak that way, especially when I'm reading. It was not my intention, again, to belittle the numbers associated with this. These deaths are tragic, and folks that get this, it's sad. But it's also sad to see 2 to 3 million people be put out of work. It's also sad to see my adoptive country lose 17% of its GDP year on year because of these measures. It's very sad. And the second and third order effects of that are, in my opinion, as sad, if not sadder. There are people that, it's sad to me that children aren't going to school right now. It's sad that they missed almost an entire year of school. Again, there is no monopoly on suffering, and compassion for whom? I like to think that we should have compassion for everyone, and we should try to come up with the most nuanced, balanced, best approach to dealing with this, and hopefully we all get through this together with the least amount of negative repercussions, and get to the other side, get to the light at the end of this tunnel, with as many of us being here as we can. As they say, the song Amazing Grace, and when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less taste to sing God's praise than when we first begun. I hope we all get there, and hopefully that day will come sooner rather than later.